Urusei Yatsura. What can I say about this classic from the princess of manga herself, Rumiko Takahashi? Incredibly popular while it ran, its influence on anime can still be felt today. You got yourself a favorite waifu? Well, you can pretty much thank Lum for that. From its cast of characters to making one of my most despised tropes, that being the main character getting routinely beat up, work by actually having him deserve it most of the time. It even has a decades-long mystery surrounding the origins of its Italian theme song. I was thoroughly entertained with the anime, and that feeling continued when I read the manga. If you're looking for an old anime to watch, then I recommend this series, and it should be a smooth transition for those of you who have watched or read Takahashi's other works like Ramna 1/2 or Inuyasha. So, while I was watching the series, I decided to check out its TV Tropes page. While looking at the different tropes, I saw the liaise part, and it mentioned how two characters from the series, Ryuunosuke and Benten, had such a close relationship that it could be viewed that they were in love. Now, having a liaise part in your mileage may vary section is nothing strange on TV tropes. What really got me thinking was how the character pages on the Urusei Yatsura wiki mentions it, which isn't something you usually see on a series wiki page unless the characters are actually in love. Along with several posts on Twitter calling Ryuunosuke a lesbian, and it seemed that this old series had some surprise Yuri waiting for me. I am a fan of Yuri, so that comes as a welcome surprise, and reminds me of when I was going through the Tenchi Muyo franchise, where despite it being one of the establishing series for the harem genre, it had Yuri at points and was serious about it. Sure, it only said Ryuunosuke and Benten's love was implied, but it was also the 70s/80s, so I can cut it some slack. I mean, not all series can be as blatant as VTubers, where being gay seems to be a requirement.
僕も好きだよ。
どこフレアの愛してるどこちょっと。フレアの愛してるどこ
I'm really excited to see the giant lady. So is she single? Maybe she's a single. Maybe we have a chance.
I made you some chocolates.
Wait, what? You made chocolates for me? No way. Can I try one?
So, I go to the ambiguously bi section of Ryuunosuke's TV Tropes page, since that usually lists the stuff that shows a character as gay. I read it, and most of what it said was why she was not gay, and really the only exception being the mention of her relationship with Benten, which isn't elaborated on. To be fair, there are times where you can just look at two characters and tell that they are a couple. Like if I were to just say Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, then anime fans would know what I'm talking about. Still, it felt off that there was no explanation on their relationship while going into more detail about the other points. Wikipedia lists Ryuunosuke as bi/lesbian, but its reasoning is a joke. They take situations out of context as well as make assertions that go against what is shown. As for Twitter posts about Ryuunosuke being a lesbian, I mean, it's Twitter. They pretty much consider every character gay. I still don't know if Jolene is a lesbian or was meant to be a lesbian or what she is. So, what is Ryuunosuke and Benten's relationship? Is Ryuunosuke a lesbian? Is Benten? After remembering some posts by the Yuri Empire, 2 videos on why SSSSS Gridman was Yuri, and fans providing evidence on why Soifone from Bleach is a lesbian, I decided that I would answer these questions myself. For this video, I'm going to be looking at both the anime and manga of Urusei Yatsura, as the anime is very much its own entity, like how the 90s Sailor Moon anime is quite different from the original manga, even when all the filler episodes are taken out. This of course does not change the fact that the manga is Rumiko's original work, and how Benten and Ryuunosuke are depicted in it are how she truly sees them. So if the anime says they're gay, it isn't a guarantee that they are in the manga as well. As for any outside offer statements by Rumiko, or any of the anime staff, I haven't found any. Now, I didn't expect to find a quote of either of them saying, "Yep, they're the big gay," or whatever. I was more so seeing if they could give any indirect evidence for or against the idea of their relationship, but nothing. I did send the question to Rumiko's official Twitter account, but it never got answered. So the anime and manga are our only sources. Before diving in, I should probably give a brief introduction to our 2 tomboys. Ryuunosuke Fujinami was raised as a boy by her absolute scumbag of a father. Being forced to work at the ripe old age of 1, she hasn't had the easiest of lives. Her goal is to become more feminine, a proper girl in spite of her father's constant interference. Despite her upbringing being rough, she isn't a jerk by any stretch. Just don't mistake her for a boy. Benten is part of the Cosmic Gods and is a loyal childhood friend of Lum. where her other childhood friends all had abilities like Lum's electricity or Oyuki's freezing, Benten only had good old fisticuffs and her trusty chain to rely on. She loves a good fight, and while she is a biker delinquent, she is very easy to get along with. With introductions finished, let's see if we can find two lilies blooming in this classic series. While different, there are quite a few similarities between the anime and manga when it comes to this topic, so I thought I should get those out of the way now. Let's start with the big one. Does Ryuunosuke like girls? Yes. We have Ryu-chan go over her first love and it turned out to be a woman. When she realized her mistake, she tried to prove that she wasn't a lesbian by listing all her other crushes, who were all girls. Now those paying attention will notice that Miss Sakura's response to hearing all this was to say that Ryuunosuke was never in love. Since Ryuunosuke liking girls is a very important point, let's make some things clear. First, Ryuunosuke knew what love was and defined it before talking about her first crush, so it's not like she didn't know what she was talking about. Second, Miss Sakura's mindset was common back then, but it doesn't erase Ryuunosuke's feelings. In fact, while most anything gay brought up in the series gets a negative response, including by Ryuunosuke herself, the series itself does not support Miss Sakura's idea. Back when Ryo-chan first entered the school, all the girls were falling for her thinking she was a boy. The boys were panicking about this and were wondering what they should do about it until it was brought up that all they had to do was wait for the girls to discover the truth and then they would lose interest in Ryo-chan. Only for the situation to pretty much play out like... Yeah, once the girls know Ryo-chan is a girl, they consistently give her over 3 times the amount of Valentine's Day chocolates and over twice the amount of daily love letters as Mendo, the most popular boy in school. I'd say they are still interested in her. Thus, there is no doubt that Ryo-chan likes girls and is simply in denial about it. So Wikipedia was right about listing her as bi/lesbian, just for the wrong reasons. Knowing specifically which one she is isn't important for the sake of this video, but it does sort of tie in with the next point. It has to do with if she has any interest in guys, since if she does, then people would just argue she ends up with one. She has flat out stated that she is not into guys despite her later assertions of being straight, with Miss Sakura agreeing that Ryu has no interest in guys. She only wants the attention of guys for the sake of affirming her femininity, such as how she was disappointed only girls supported her during the Miss Tomobiki contest or when Miss Sakura told her that getting a boyfriend would help bring out her womanly charm. The only exception is that she does have an ideal man in mind.
そうだな。海みてえに荒々しくてたくましくてよ。俺より喧嘩が強いやつだよな。
The anime and manga do follow this up in different ways, but ultimately come to the same conclusion. In the anime, even after having the incentive that having a boyfriend would make her more feminine, we do not see her try to get a boyfriend in the remaining episodes, movies, or OVAs. In fact, it seems any interest she had for it is gone, as in the Cupid episode, the Cupid asks Ryu if she has any girls she likes. She gave an annoyed reply, but then when she was asked if she liked any guys, she was far more annoyed than with the previous question. In the manga, after hearing Miss Sakura's suggestion, the next day Sakura sets up an event where each male student could face Ryu, and if they won, then they could go out with her. A bit of a compromise of her ideal guy, but Ryu agrees with it. She ends up beating everyone and thinks that she won't find her ideal guy at this school. Much later in the manga, we are introduced to Nagisa, Ryunosuke's fiancé, who is in a similar situation to Ryu, being a guy raised as a girl. Nagisa ends up meeting all of Ryu's requirements for being her ideal guy, but when Lum tells Nagisa that Ryu likes strong men, Ryu denies it, and when Nagisa wins their fight, Ryu just says she hates him. So, she doesn't have an ideal type of guy anymore. She has no interest in guys, so it's not likely that she would end up with a guy, and I guess this makes her more of a lesbian than bi. Her denial of this is maintained in both the anime and manga, with her showing no real change in the anime, while in the manga there is a bit of a change. The change is what I just mentioned before about her denying that she likes strong guys. That is clearly a shift in how she thinks, but there is also an interesting thing that Nagisa says. After Nagisa beats Ryu and Ryu starts to say that she hates him, Nagisa says, "You can be beaten by a girl, but not..." That line implies that Ryu would have accepted her loss and gone out with Nagisa if Nagisa was a girl. That is also interesting for this video since Benten matches the tough and strong part of Ryu's ideal, and while we don't know what her thoughts on the sea are, and her fight with Ryu had them even, Ryu has made compromises on this before. Of course, this is Nagisa saying this, and not Ryuunosuke, so this isn't guaranteed to be true. There is a reason to think that it is likely true though, and that is Nagisa should have no reason to say it. When he first met Ryu, Ryu thought he was a girl and cited that as a reason not to kiss him, and now he knows that simply beating Ryu in a fight will not ensure a date. Despite those two important facts, he still said that line, which, in my opinion, gives it some meaning. However, even if I take that line as 100% true, Ryu would still be in denial about herself, and it's not enough of a step for me to logically think that she would accept the fact that she's a lesbian after the series ended. Moving on to Benten, we have her lack of a boyfriend and it being heavily implied that she's never had one. When Benten had her chain stolen, Lum and Oyuki question why she cares about it so much. This causes Oyuki to think that it was a gift from a boyfriend, to which Lum says that she hasn't heard about Benten having a boyfriend, and after Oyuki finishes her idea of Benten receiving the chain, we see Lum in disbelief about Benten having a boyfriend. Benten responds to the story saying the reason for her caring for the chain is nothing like that, but we do get an important connection here. The link is Lum never heard about Benten having a boyfriend in relation to her having the chain, and we see in flashbacks that Benten has had the chain since she was a kid. That highly suggests that she hasn't had a boyfriend. Of course, there is the possibility that she just didn't tell her friends, but that seems unlikely considering Lum was very quick to tell her friends about her darling Ataru, even telling Oyuki of him multiple times even as soon as chapter 7. We also have a later chapter showing Lum and Benten didn't get angry at one another when talking about bad things they did to each other. So, she most likely never had a boyfriend. How about interesting guys during the series? Not really, except for one case in the anime and then kind of a case in the manga. The case in the anime is that during her first appearance, she seemed to have an interest in Ataru. This attraction isn't brought up again, and that is likely since she never had the attraction in the manga. In the manga, she pretended to flirt with him so that Lum would get angry and cause the cosmic gods to win the war game. The last order of business to go over before diving into their relationship is to go over why I'm not talking about any other possible ships. No guys, since Ryu has no interest in them, and I just went over Benten not having a boyfriend. Benten doesn't really have any girls after her. The closest things are Ron kissing her to try and drain her energy, and that time when Sugar said that Benten's boobs are big enough to be proud of, though nothing romantic resulted from that comment. Onto Ryu's list of girls. Kurama and Ran both fell for Ryuunosuke, but lost interest when they found out she was a girl. Asuka has a fear of men, with the exception of big brothers, and thought Ryu was a guy. Despite her phobia, she ended up falling for Ryu, though she still doesn't know Ryu is a girl, and is still a massive brocon for her actual brother, so it's not like she's pining for Ryu. Shinobu. This one's probably the second biggest ship after Ryu and Benten due to the teasing of it and the fact that they had accidental kisses in both the anime and manga. Thing is, Shinobu is not into girls, and when Ryu mentioned Shinobu when going through her crushes, Shinobu flat out rejected her and said it was wrong. No proof that she's in denial, especially since she ends up with Inaba. The last one would be all the girls at school constantly confessing their love to their favorite tomboy. This one has a different answer depending on if we're talking about the anime or manga, but since we're already talking about relationships, I feel it should be here. Without getting too far ahead, let me put it like this. If Ryuunosuke and Benten's relationship is as close as what the internet has implied, then if Ryu accepted the fact that she's a lesbian, she would naturally go to Benten rather than girls she knows nothing about. On the other hand, if the relationship isn't on that level, then Ryu would go to the schoolgirl since they have actually shown interest in her. Start her own Yuri harem if she felt like it. Alright, with all that said out of the way, on to their relationship.
ベンテン&龍之介、明日に向かって走れ。
The bulk of Benten and Ryuunosuke's relationship in the anime is made up of 3 episodes. They are episode 112, which is where they meet each other and is an anime original episode, episode 160, which is based on chapters from the manga and fairly faithful to them, and finally episode 173, an episode so loosely based on a manga chapter that it might as well be considered an anime original. All their other interactions pretty much just have them in the same place with no development, though I will also bring up the Final Chapters movie thanks to a line change from the manga. In episode 112, Benten had some free time so she decided to visit Lum at school. Upon arriving, she instantly takes notice of Ryuunosuke where she walks up to Ryu and throws a punch. Ryuunosuke caught the punch, and then they both complimented each other. We cut to a ramen shop where the two of them are discussing the best way to throw a punch and just getting along well. They both end up searching for a lost cat and end up fighting a whole biker gang together where they display great teamwork despite only meeting that same day. They eventually find the kitten and return it to its owner. The girl mistakes Ryuunosuke for a boy and kisses her. Benten's reaction to the kiss is to smile and tease Ryu about having a pretty girlfriend. Ryu says she's a woman, only for Benten to reply,
わかってるって。
This further shows just how much Benten knew about Ryu. It is true that earlier in the episode she was present when Ryu was getting angry at being called a boy, but the clear indication is that she always knew Ryu was a woman, hence Ryu's surprised face. It is a great display of their connection since Benten is the only person to immediately know that Ryu was a woman. There were seemingly cases of other people first meeting Ryu and knowing she was a woman, but there is context to them. During a previous episode, the crows hire some punks to harass Ryu as a way to see if she would be a good mate for their princess. These punks call Ryu a girl, but the crows at this point believe Ryu is a boy, and thus so would the punks. So what's happening is the punks did not know Ryu was a girl, and were just calling her a girl as an insult in the same vein as, you throw like a girl. The other case was when Ryu lost her chest strap and then everyone recognized her as a girl. This is because being constantly wrapped up did not harm her development, and it was apparent to everyone that she's a woman. The reason this doesn't change the Benten situation is that Ryuunosuke had her chest strap on in that episode, so she's how she looks when everyone mistakes her for a boy, and yet Benten still recognized her. Episode 160 begins with Ryu being thrown into the air by her father in front of a passing Benten. The scene goes into slow motion where we have Ryuunosuke smiling and saying hi to Benten, with Benten giving her a grin and saying she's quite cheerful early in the morning. Benten throws Ryu back into the fight saying she should go for it, but threw her a tad too hard and Ryu ended up being flat against a wall. Upon seeing Benten playing a shooting game with Ten, Ryuunosuke wonders how a woman could be so violent. This seems a little odd considering their previous episode and how Ryuunosuke is. This is because that previous episode was anime original, while this is based on the manga. Back to the episode, after throwing Benten and then pushing her back, Ryu was finally able to tell Benten that she should act more like a woman. After Ryu leaves, Benten thinks that Ryu was strange, and that's when Ryu's father appears. He says that what Ryu was really trying to do was confess to Benten. This causes Benten to become incredibly shocked, but notably not blue in the face or any signs of disgust like nearly all the other gay interactions in this show. Upon hearing Ryu worded it so strange because she was shy, Benten runs to Ryuunosuke. Upon reaching Ryuunosuke, she asks what Ryu has to be so ashamed of and says that she should have just said that she liked her. She did this all while smiling and teasing Ryu over her supposed shyness, even saying, "Don't say another word," when Ryu was trying to clear things up. So Benten thought Ryuunosuke asked her out and was completely into it. I'd say that goes beyond implications and clearly shows that Benten has a thing for Ryu. Confirmation of the two being lesbians. That already puts them in a better position than a lot of girls in Yuri subtext anime. Off-screen, Ryuunosuke was able to sort out this misunderstanding since we cut to Benten thinking of Ryu's comments on femininity. She goes in front of a mirror and thinks about how no one has ever told her to be more feminine before. She acts a little girly in front of the mirror thinking she's not bad at all, but gets incredibly flustered when Lum nearly caught her doing this, resulting in her accidentally breaking various things. Ryunosuke's comments start to get to Benten, and eventually the two get into a fight over who is more feminine. That does say something for how unfeminine Ryunosuke considers Benten to be, since she knows she isn't very girly herself, and in the anime she has a doesn't hit girls rule, and yet she is completely willing to fight Benten. Eventually, the episode sees them work together in a big fight where they take everyone else out, and closes with them acknowledging each other as women, by throwing punches at each other. The final episode deals with a fight between Ryu and her father. Since it's summertime, Ryu wants to go swimming in the PE class, but her father will only give her boys swim shorts. This results in Ryu just watching the swim class and feeling down. Benten had come to visit the school that day and asked Ryu what was wrong. Ryu says nothing, and that it's none of her business when she correctly guesses it involves her father. While wondering why he keeps denying that Ryu is a girl, Benten suggests that there might be a method to his madness. That him doing this is his own twisted version of love, and that no parent hates their child. Ryu scoffs it off at first, but does come to consider it later when she finds letters her father wrote to his deceased wife, and makes an effort to improve their relationship. Unfortunately, Ryu ended up being right since the letters end up being fake, with Ryu's mother not even being dead, for the purpose of distracting Ryu for the entire summer so she wouldn't complain about not wearing a girl's swimsuit. The last point of this episode is that the fight between Ryu and her father becomes a big event where various people place bets on who they think will win. Benten's response to the betting? Of course. I'm betting on Ryuunosuke. Finally, we have a line change from the final chapters movie. During this part of the movie, Lum has threatened to erase all memories of aliens from the people of Earth if Otaro fails to touch her horns. Benten objects to this since she's come to like quite a few of these Earthlings, and this is where the anime and manga diverge. In the manga, she says Lum will have to fight her if she wants to go through with this, while in the anime she gives her an ultimatum. Either stop this nonsense, or our friendship is over. Quite the statement given they've been great friends since childhood. Now, I'm not saying that, by people of Earth, Benten meant Ryu since we clearly see her talking to Sakura and Shinobu about it. What I am saying is that Ryu is the Earthling that Benten is the closest with, her having very little interactions with anyone else. So it is likely that Ryu was the biggest reason for her making that ultimatum. And that's their relationship. It's easy to see why this ship exists since the anime gives plenty of fuel to it. They are closer with each other than anyone else. They had an instant understanding with one another. Ryu brought up a point to Benten that no one else had and was more meaningful than Benten initially thought. And of course, Benten making an effort to try and help Ryu with a deep personal problem. Throw in Ryuunosuke liking girls and Benten being not only accepting, but happy to go out with Ryuunosuke. And it seems like all the elements are there for them to be a couple, or at least become one after the anime's ending. There is an issue preventing that, however. That issue is Ryuunosuke. Or more specifically, Ryuunosuke's deniability. Even after having past crushes on girls and listing them out, she still denies being a lesbian, and the anime doesn't give her anything to indicate that she's slowly accepting herself. Even using the small steps she had in the manga, it's not big enough to where I can assume that she eventually stops denying the truth. Related to that, even if we grant that Nagisa was 100% correct when she said Ryu would go out with a girl if she could beat her, we still don't know if Benten would win that fight, and they would have to be fighting for that purpose to begin with. So we can't assume Ryuunosuke would make any moves by herself. But what about Benten? Well, she has left the door open for Ryuunosuke to ask her out at any time. Benten hasn't made any advances in the time since the fake confession. I do believe that if Benten found out that Ryu was attracted to her, which having Ryu move on from Shinobu is a fair assumption at this point, then she would pester Ryu until she was finally honest with herself, like she did with the fake confession. But I have no evidence to assume that this scenario would even happen in the first place. In summary, the ship between Ryuunosuke and Benten is not one that comes out of thin air. It was not viewers seeing two anime girls with no relationship and thinking, let's make them kiss. It came from things that happened in the anime, their interactions, and the fact that both of them were gay. It gave credence to the idea that the two of them would eventually get together. By that same notion, however, the evidence in the anime tells us that the more reasonable and likely outcome is that the status quo is maintained. That Benten and Ryuunosuke simply remain close friends.
Ryuunosuke 対 Benten 虚しきお色気大決闘
In the manga, the first two meetings happen in chapters 168 and 268, with both happening on Setsubun. In 168, they don't interact one-on-one. Benten just comes to the school and gets part of the class to help her, with Ryu just being in the background. 268 has her come to do this again, only this time she ends up shooting Ryu with a bunch of beans and dodges a retaliatory kick. Immediately following this we have chapters 269 to 271, covering the womanhood contest I've mentioned before. We do get to see some more contests between Benten and Ryuunosuke, but the overall plot is the same. The differences in terms of them being in love, however, are major. It opens the same with Benten throwing Ryu back into the fight too hard, but the little moment between them is gone. Next is the biggest difference. Benten can't tell that Ryu is a girl. That special thing that showed how close their understanding of each other was does not exist in the manga. Not only that, but she doesn't find out the truth until they started their femininity contest. Meaning when she was told that Ryu loved her and she was happy to accept those feelings, she thought she had been confessed to by a guy. And that femininity contest was the only big interaction between Ryu and Benten in the manga. Sure, Ryu is still the closest human to Benten, and they did become friends after earning each other's respect, but it would be coming out of left field to say that there is anything romantic between the two of them in the manga continuity. To sum this video up, the relationship in the anime is so close to being romantic, but just missing a few details, while in the manga they only became friends. Why did the anime decide to develop their relationship that way? I don't know, and I would have expected it to be something where they would censor that in the anime given all the mentions of lesbianism were removed from the Cutie Honey anime. I can't even say it was an accident like with Project Echo, since they added Benten's shocked face to the fake confession scene as a way to remind the audience that Benten knows Ryu is a girl. Either way, it happened, and the only way their relationship will change now is if one of the anime staff comments on it, or we get another OVA. I know I said this way back at the beginning, but go watch the show. It may not have had Yuri, but it still has loads of fun characters to watch. If you want Yuri, then for manga, I gotta go with the classic girlfriends and the cute Kei-san. For anime, Sinful Gear is good if you're looking for something a bit different from your girls' school setting, and oh, Strike Witches is always a fun time. That Barkhorn and Hartman episode in Road to Berlin was awesome. But before you do that, make sure to watch Urusei Yatsura, because I guarantee that you will enjoy it as much as I did.
Goodbye,